Hi, welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name's Lee. On this channel, I discuss geopolitics and world affairs and subjects like that. Now today I want to talk about the European Union's energy dilemma. Now, what do I mean by their energy dilemma? Well, I'm talking about their energy policy with regards to Russia. So let's first of all talk about gas. So at the start of this conflict, we saw the European Union put these sanctions on Russia. And one of the sanctions they wanted to impose was they wanted to stop the import of gas from Russia. But it became quickly apparent to those people who were making the decisions that they can't actually do without Russian gas. And we had one of the German ministers trot off to Qatar. We had Boris Johnson visiting Saudi Arabia in the hope of trying to secure more oil and more gas. But many of these countries, we also saw news that the US was going to supply all this additional gas to Europe. But it's quickly become apparent that there is not enough spare capacity, or there is no spare capacity within the world to supply Europe with gas. So then shortly after that, Russia put some terms in that gas must be paid for in rubles, and they came up with a mechanism where those EU countries could pay actually euros or dollars still. It would be then converted to rubles by Gazprom Bank, and then the rubles would be transferred to Gazprom in Russia. And initially all the European countries says, no, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do as Russia says, because we sanction them. But if you fast forward to now, it seems as most of the major gas buyers within Europe have actually abided by those conditions and are going along and purchasing gas, because it's become apparent that especially Germany and some of the other economies just can't do without that gas. And even the countries like Poland, who refused to purchase that gas, are now actually buying it through Germany. And the plan was, I feel, it seems that some of these countries like Germany, they wanted to buy a lot of gas now and stockpile it before the cold season comes, and then they could turn around and say, oh look, we've stopped buying gas. But as Germany are now having to supply that gas to other countries, including Poland, I think Bulgaria might be another one, they're finding it harder and harder to do that. And it will also be very much dependent on how cold the winter is in Europe. If we have a really cold winter, they will be forced to continue buying gas from Europe. And you've already had a number of the leaders from large industry in Germany says if they stopped purchasing gas from Russia, it would absolutely devastate their businesses and in turn devastate the economy. You could be looking at severe recession, hundreds of thousands of, if not millions, of job losses. But this doesn't seem to have deterred the EU from sort of marching forward and onward with their sanctions. So although I say most of those companies are now continuing to buy gas from Russia, the EU have moved on to oil, and they've been trying to get all the nations together to impose an oil embargo on Russia. But again, there are countries like Hungary who've fiercely pushed back against that, and you've got sort of Germany who want to push ahead with it. But right now there is no consensus on embargoing oil from Russia. Now, what I suspect is that the EU will eventually push this through against the wishes of the US even. Janet Yellen of the US a week or two ago said that they don't think it's a good idea for Europe to have an oil blockade against Russia, because it will just force up the price of oil. What you've got to remember, the US are coming into the November sort of round of elections, and obviously they don't want gas prices to rise any further. And something else which is rumoured to be happening, some of these strategic oil reserves that Biden is releasing are actually getting shipped to Europe, because a number of European countries have stopped buying Russian oil. Now, what I also suspect that will happen, the European Union will announce, oh yeah, we've put a complete blockade on buying Russian oil. But then that oil will leave in tankers to go to other places like China and India. Also, many of these oil tankers will be filled up, and they actually go to sea before they're sold. And then this oil is sold through middlemen, and it's then delivered to whichever country that oil trader does a deal with. Now, what I suspect is some of this oil will leave Russia, and then it will be bought by middlemen and actually sold back to the EU countries. And that will enable Europeans to be able to say, European politicians, they'll be able to say, oh look, we're not buying Russian oil. Although they won't be buying it directly from Russia, they will still be buying Russian oil. Another scenario is that oil will be blended with oil from other countries, so then the EU will be able to say, oh, it's not Russian oil, because it will be blended. They will say, oh, it's, I don't know, Saudi oil or something like that, because they'll mix it maybe 51% Saudi oil, 49% Russian oil. And, they'll then say, oh, it's Saudi oil. So this is some ways that the EU will try to trick their public into saying that they've banned oil. Now, one interesting thing here, there are obviously many contracts for gas and oil with these European countries by Russia, probably hundreds of different contracts, and all these contracts will have different end dates. So it'll be very interesting to see what Russia do when these oil and gas contracts come to an end. Will they renew them? And when they renew them, will they insist on payment in rubles? Because due to the fact that the Europeans and the Americans have sanctioned Russia, froze its reserves, sanctioned its central bank, dollars and euros are much less used to Russia than actual rubles. And very interestingly, just as a side note, when the US and EU and the UK imposed these sanctions on Russia, they told us all that it would collapse Russia's economy and it would collapse the ruble. And in the time since the invasion happened, the ruble is actually now at one of its strongest levels it has been. So that the EU and the US now are desperate to save face and impose even more sanctions on Russia, even though it will impact their own economies more. So if we take oil and gas, if the European Union are buying that through third parties, they will obviously be paying more for it than they would be paying if they bought it directly from Russia. And the knock-on effect of that is that European consumers will end up paying more for their energy. And this is at a time when inflation and the cost of living is a big problem within those European countries. Anyway, that's my opinions and my thoughts on the subject. Love to know what you think down in the comments. Please comment down below. Appreciate you supporting this channel. Give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you are interested in the channel. But as always, for now, take care.